Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. Imagine being married for 43 years, and suddenly your spouse asks for a year of complete freedom. No contact, no rules, and the possibility of forming new relationships. How would you react? This is the exact situation I found myself in. Here's how it all started. Oscar Anderson, the successful CEO of a family business, had just arranged a surprise trip to celebrate many years of marriage with his wife, Poppy. Little did he know, their life was about to experience a significant upheaval. For years, Oscar had worked tirelessly to build a thriving company that had been passed down through his family for generations. He devoted himself to providing his family with a stable and comfortable life, balancing his role as a business leader with active community involvement. "Good evening, dear," Oscar greeted warmly as he entered the kitchen after a long day at work. Poppy glanced at him briefly from her seat at the table, her face expressionless, giving nothing away. "I thought you'd be home earlier," she remarked. "What's with the red envelope? Valentine's Day was last week." "I had some business to finish," Oscar replied, setting his briefcase and the envelope down on the coffee table. He tapped the envelope gently. "We need to talk about this tonight." Oscar sat down across from her and noticed 2 glasses of red wine already poured. Beside her glass were a pen and a notebook, which piqued his curiosity. "How was your day?" Poppy asked, sounding casual, though her tone carried a certain detachment, as if she wasn't particularly interested in his answer. "It was fine," Oscar replied cautiously, his gaze drifting toward the notebook. "But I sense this isn't just about my day." Poppy sighed heavily, as if gathering the courage to speak. "You're right," she began. "Lately I've been thinking a lot. About my life, about us. After organizing a reunion for my sorority sisters after so many years, losing 2 close friends to cancer, and with the kids leaving home, I've started to wonder where I'm heading." She paused, looking directly into Oscar's eyes. "And that brings me to our marriage. 43 years is a long time. Some of my sorority friends are already on their 2nd, even 3rd marriages." She leaned back in her chair and continued. "So where does that leave us? What keeps us together? And more importantly, what will keep us together for the next 20 years? Oscar listened intently, his mind racing. "I understand," he said slowly. "I've been reflecting on my life, too. Some men go through a midlife crisis, buy expensive cars, or start dating younger women. I'm grateful I didn't take that path. I have an incredible wife who keeps me grounded. And how can I make the next phase of our life something to look forward to?" Poppy smiled faintly. "That's why I love you, Oscar. You really listen. Most men wouldn't even try to understand." She took a deep breath before continuing. "But I think I have a solution. My whole life, I've lived under someone else's roof. First, it was my father's house, then the sorority dorm in college. After we married, I moved into this house, a wedding gift from your grandparents." Her voice grew more passionate. "Being with you has been wonderful, but not entirely fulfilling. I've always been the wife of the Chamber of Commerce president, the wife of the church council member, the wife of the country club president. I've always been in your shadow. You are the sun, Oscar, and I'm one of the moons orbiting around you." Oscar sat in silence, unsure where her words were leading. "I need to step out of this orbit," Poppy said firmly. "If I don't, I'm afraid I'll lose myself completely." She took a deep breath before continuing. "I want to leave. I've thought about this long and hard. I need a break. Freedom. Call it what you will. A year, with no contact between us. I'll move out and live on my own, and during that time we can both reflect." Oscar was stunned, his mind struggling to keep up. "No contact at all?" he asked in disbelief. "I understand you need space, but no communication at all, that seems too much." Poppy nodded. "It will be hard for both of us," she admitted. "I'll think about you every day, but after a year we'll meet again and decide what comes next." Oscar stared at her, bewildered. His life, once so neatly organized, was now crumbling right before his eyes. "Our lives are so closely intertwined," Poppy began, her voice calm but firm. How can we possibly untangle them? It will feel like we're no longer husband and wife, she explained, as if it were self-evident. She continued, outlining her vision of the future. They would drift apart, each focusing on their own interests, exploring new passions. Poppy shared that she couldn't wait to take feminist courses and immerse herself in fresh perspectives. It's like a break, but without bitterness or distrust, she said, almost cheerfully. We'll still be lovers, just apart for a year. Couples in the military do it all the time. It works for them. Oscar listened, but with every word she spoke, a cold fear crept into his heart. You mentioned you'd behave like a free woman, seeing new people, he began, his voice trembling with anxiety. Does that mean you plan to see other men? Poppy's smile was faint and indifferent. Perhaps, she admitted, keeping her tone composed. But I doubt anyone will rush to invite me to a fancy dinner or anything like that. Oscar's face tensed, his worry growing. And if you do end up seeing someone, does that mean you'll, well, sleep with them? His voice shook as he tried to stay calm. Poppy shrugged slightly. Maybe, she said, still unperturbed. How else can I fully understand what it means to be a woman? You're the only man I've ever been with, Oscar. I just want to be on the same level as you. Oscar's face tightened, anger starting to simmer inside him. You seem to be forgetting something important. We're married. We made vows to share life together, to go through everything as one. I've kept my word, and I expect the same from you. Poppy's response was dismissive. Let's see how things are in a year, she said, waving off his concerns. We'll figure it out when the time comes. Oscar's patience was wearing thin. There's no guarantee you'll come back to me at all, he said, his voice rising. What if you fall in love with someone else? What if I'm no longer the one you want? Oh, don't be so dramatic, Poppy scoffed. It's just physical intimacy, Oscar, nothing more. When we reunite after a year, you'll be grateful everything is back to normal. Don't make it out to be more than it is. I'm trying to grow, to become more confident, and that will make me a better partner for you. Oscar felt the ground slipping from under him. A year without contact? It seemed too extreme. Why can't we work this out through therapy? He suggested, trying to find a compromise. Poppy shook her head, her resolve unwavering. Talking isn't enough. I don't want to just discuss change. I need to live it. If we don't take a real break, I'll keep relying on you and won't be able to grow. I need to know what it's like to be apart so I can come back with a clearer mind. Oscar's voice was barely a whisper. I don't think I can survive this. But Poppy was resolute. Oscar, I need to do this now. It's better to go through a year of uncertainty and stress than to drag this out for years. When it's over, we'll be stronger. Oscar's heart clenched. When are you planning to move out? He asked, his voice hollow. I've already rented an apartment for the next year. I'll start moving this weekend, Poppy replied, as if it were just another task on her list. Oscar felt the ground completely give way beneath him. He stammered, trying to find the right words. Can't we at least talk about this in more detail before you make such a big decision? He pleaded. Poppy reached out, placing her hand on his. I'm really grateful that you're willing to discuss this, she said softly. I truly believe that in the long run, this will make our relationship better. I love you for your understanding. Oscar pulled his hand away, her words cutting deep. You're giving me far too much credit, he said painfully. I don't understand why you're doing this, and to be honest, I don't support it. It feels like this is happening no matter what I want, like my feelings don't even matter. Without saying another word, he stood, his head spinning. At the moment, I'm completely overwhelmed. I don't even know where to begin or how to handle this situation. My head is spinning like a whirlwind. Maybe we just need to sleep on it, and tomorrow evening we can figure everything out. Are you going to bed, or are we already starting to drift apart from each other? Not yet, darling, Poppy softly replied. I need to finish all the details of my move, but I'll join you soon. With a heavy heart, Oscar climbed the stairs, exhausted. He collapsed onto the bed, but sleep wouldn't come. His thoughts were a tangled mess of uncertainty, questions endlessly spinning in his head, offering no clear answers. Later that night, Poppy quietly slipped into bed next to him, gently pressing her body against his. She kissed his shoulder, and he felt her warm tears soak into his skin as she whispered, "I'm so sorry, Oscar." "I'm sorry too, Poppy," he responded, his voice barely audible. "I love you," she whispered, her words filled with emotion. After a moment's hesitation, he asked, "Is this the last time I'll hear you say that?" Her voice was soft, but with a glimmer of hope as she replied, "I want this to make us better, not worse. I'm leaving to become a better wife, a better lover, and I will come back." The next morning, Oscar woke up earlier than usual. For the first time, he didn't make Poppy her morning coffee in bed. Instead, he left the house, got into his car, and texted his friend Tony. He needed advice, a way to make sense of the chaos around him. After Oscar explained Poppy's plan, Tony listened carefully and then looked at him seriously. "Honestly, man, it sounds like she already has someone else, but she's hesitating to make the final move. She's testing how things will play out. If it works out with him, you'll be her second choice. If it doesn't, she'll come back, pretending to be renewed and ready to be the perfect wife again. You're her backup plan, Oscar, while she figures it all out." "How do I stop her from using me like that?" Oscar asked, feeling a knot tighten in his stomach. "Let her go, and do it quickly," Tony said firmly. "Take control. The day she moves out, file for divorce. Make it clear that she's the one leaving. Divorce will take about 5 to 6 months. If for some reason you still want her back, just don't sign the final papers. That way, you'll be in control." Tony continued, "And remember this, if she cheats and you take her back, it'll be easier for her to cheat again. And one more thing, keep calm. Don't lose control, don't yell. If things get out of hand, especially in court, losing your temper will only hurt you. Act like you agree with her decision, like you understand." As Oscar was leaving the car dealership, his eyes fell on a black convertible. On impulse, he decided to buy it. "If things are going this way, I might as well get something good out of this year," he joked to Tony with a grin. When he got home that evening, Poppy was already there, her anxiety evident. "Oscar, darling, where are you?" she called, her voice full of worry. "I missed you this morning. Can we talk? I've been thinking a lot since our conversation last night." Oscar kept his tone calm. "I needed some time alone. The drive helped clear my head. I've been doing a lot of thinking, too." "I can take the day off if you need me," Poppy offered, her voice softening. "I know I turned your world upside down last night. I'm really worried about you, my wonderful husband. Just tell me what you need. We can talk now, at lunch, or dinner, whenever. I need you to be here. I'm afraid of the path I feel like I'm heading down. Please, Oscar, I need your advice." A flicker of resentment sparked in Oscar as she suddenly sought comfort, despite everything she had said. Taking a deep breath, he quietly replied, "I need more time, Poppy. I really need to think about this separation and what it means for us. I'll be in the study, I'll close the door, turn off my phone, and try to figure out what to do next." "Why don't we stick to our usual dinner time today?" Oscar suggested. "I'll take care of everything so you can relax and not worry about cooking or cleaning." Poppy quickly agreed, grateful for the offer. However, when they later sat down at the table, an unspoken tension filled the room. During dinner, Poppy enthusiastically shared her plans about moving into her new apartment and the courses she intended to take. She asked Oscar if she could take some of their furniture with her, and he briefly nodded in response. "Thank you for being considerate," Poppy said with a smile. "You're so kind." Oscar restrained himself from making a sarcastic remark. Instead, he said, "I doubt all your things will fit in a 200-square-foot apartment. What's your plan for the rest?" When Poppy suggested leaving some items in the house, Oscar firmly shook his head. "If you're moving, everything has to go with you. This can't be a backup option while you start a new life." Poppy's initial excitement about her decision began to fade. "You're okay with me taking the bed, but now you're creating issues about the other things," she said, showing her irritation. "What am I supposed to do if I can't leave them here?" "If you want to be independent, why are you asking me for help?" Oscar responded coldly. "You chose to leave and live on your own, so why do you expect me to step in now? You can always rent a storage unit. There are plenty around the city. The conversation quickly escalated into a heated argument about logistics. In the end, Oscar decided to stop beating around the bush. Poppy, I've been thinking a lot since we first talked about all this. If I have to be without a wife for a while, maybe I should consider making some changes, he stated bluntly. Poppy stared at him in shock. What changes are you talking about? I'll be free, and I want to change my life, Oscar said calmly. Maybe I should think about replacing my wife with someone younger and more interesting, instead of staying with the outdated version. Wait a minute, Poppy flared up. I'm doing this to become a better version of myself for you. There's no reason for you to start looking for someone else. I don't like your plan either, Oscar retorted. But you made it clear that my feelings don't matter. You were going to do what you wanted regardless of how I felt. You didn't care what it meant to me to have a wife who wants to be with other men. So, while you do whatever you want, I'll do the same over the next year. Let's see how it all turns out. The argument escalated to the point where Poppy eventually stormed out of the house, leaving Oscar alone. A red envelope with their travel plans remained unopened on the coffee table, a reminder of what once was. In the following weeks, Oscar threw himself into work and enjoyed his newfound freedom. He redecorated the house, removing family photos and replacing them with sports memorabilia. He started grilling steaks outside and listening to jazz at full volume, things Poppy had never approved of. Meanwhile, Poppy settled into her new apartment and began taking feminist theory courses. However, the joy of this new phase in her life was overshadowed by the growing distance between her and their children, who didn't understand her choices. As time passed, both Oscar and Poppy found themselves navigating unfamiliar territory. Although he didn't want to, Oscar attended court-ordered marriage counseling sessions. The therapist explored the reasons behind their separation. Poppy insisted that she needed to rediscover herself, while Oscar remained adamant that her desire to be with other men was something he could not tolerate. During this time, Oscar started spending time with two women, Linda, a striking widow with a young son, and Sarah, a former professional swimmer now working in real estate. While he enjoyed their company, he stayed true to himself and decided to remain celibate until his marriage was officially over. On the other hand, Poppy fully immersed herself in her new life, going to clubs with her recently divorced friends and enjoying the attention of other men. However, a chance encounter with a charming stranger named Nick led to unexpected consequences. As the year-long separation neared its end, the tension between Oscar and Poppy reached its peak. Poppy was confident that Oscar would take her back without hesitation, but Oscar had changed. Her betrayal had left a wound that would not heal so easily. The tension reached its peak when the couple's children discovered incriminating photos of Poppy's infidelity, sealing the fate of their already crumbling marriage. The day of reckoning arrived when Oscar and Poppy met at the lawyer's office to finalize the inevitable. Poppy arrived first, stylishly dressed in a new outfit, radiating hope that perhaps there was still a chance for reconciliation. Oscar arrived shortly after her, calmly placing a bright red envelope on the table. "Apologies for the delay," he murmured. After exchanging quick, polite greetings, the lawyers got straight to business, presenting the divorce papers. Oscar and Poppy signed the documents as previously agreed. Once the paperwork was complete, Oscar turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Do you have anything to say?" he asked, his voice calm but devoid of emotion. Poppy took a deep breath. "This year has been incredibly hard without the person I love by my side. But through these difficulties, I've grown. I've gained a deeper understanding of myself and our marriage. I need to thank you, Oscar, for giving me the space to reflect. Now, more than ever, I am committed to our union. I promise, you will never regret giving me another chance. I will prove my loyalty to you for the rest of my life." Oscar remained unmoved, his face betraying no reaction. When she finished, he responded in an even tone, "Trust is the foundation of everything, Poppy. Our vows were built on that, on loyalty. Without trust, love cannot exist. That's why we're here, signing these divorce papers. I can only hope that we both will be honest with ourselves." He paused before continuing. "Over the past year, I've interacted with other women, but I never allowed myself to cross certain boundaries. He locked eyes with Poppy. Can you say the same? Have you been faithful to me? The question caught Poppy off guard. She blinked, startled, and quickly replied, Yes, of course, I've been faithful. Oscar's expression hardened. He took the red envelope, pulled out a photograph, and placed it in front of her. The picture showed Poppy passionately kissing Nick at a nightclub. Is this your idea of loyalty? He asked, his tone sharp. Poppy's face flushed with embarrassment. She stammered, It was just a kiss. It meant nothing. I didn't cheat. Oscar didn't respond immediately, instead producing another, far more compromising photo. Poppy's eyes widened in shock, horror spreading across her face. Where did you get this? She asked in panic. Were you spying on me? Oscar's voice trembled with restrained anger. Our son's girlfriend took these. She happened to be at the same club. Our son found out from her. It's a disgrace to our family. As the weight of her actions settled in, Poppy's face paled. Tears began to well in her eyes, while Oscar's voice rose, filled with unbearable emotion. Do you have any idea what it was like for our son to see his mother, in a crowded club, behaving like this with some random guy? He had to endure that shame. Can you even imagine what was going through his mind when he saw that photo? And now you wonder why the kids won't answer your calls? Casting one last glance at his lawyer, Oscar handed over the signed divorce documents. File them, he ordered firmly. Poppy's voice was desperate as she tried to justify herself. Oscar, it was meaningless. It meant nothing to me, and it meant nothing to Nick. It was just physical. There was no love involved. Oscar's eyes grew even colder, his gaze icy. That's what makes it even worse, Poppy, he replied, his voice terrifyingly calm. The fact that it meant nothing to you, knowing how much it meant to me. Do you even realize how deeply that hurts? His words were the final crushing blow. That's the cruelest thing you could have said to me, she whispered, broken. Poppy burst into tears, her body shaking with uncontrollable sobs as she pleaded for forgiveness. No, please, no, I want to be your wife again. Please forgive me. I promise, I'll be faithful from now on. Please don't leave me. I don't want to end up like one of those women who are left alone after a divorce. Don't push me away. I beg you, forgive me. Her desperate words didn't reach him. Oscar had already stepped out the door, and her pleas gradually faded as he made his way to his BMW. The rest of the day passed in quiet solitude. With a glass of whiskey in hand and a slowly smoldering cigar nearby, he sat on the terrace, lost in thought. In the evening, his phone buzzed non-stop, calls from Poppy and messages from Linda, Sarah, and the kids. But Oscar decided to ignore them all. The next morning, Linda gently shook his shoulder, waking him from a restless sleep. How are you holding up? She asked, her face full of concern. Oscar forced a faint smile. I'm okay, I guess. Why wouldn't I be? At least you haven't lost your sense of humor, even after the divorce. She sat beside him, wrapping her arms around his shoulders. What's next? Will I be a part of what's to come? Without hesitation, Oscar replied, Of course you will. I'm here for you. Take your time. You're still processing the end of a long marriage. It's no small thing. She squeezed his hand, offering support. I'll be here for as long as it takes. As winter set in, with its crisp air and white snowflakes, Oscar slowly started to adjust to his new reality. He declined an invitation to meet friends over the weekend, feeling the need to be alone and reflect. On Saturday morning, Sarah appeared at his doorstep. I heard it hasn't been easy, she said kindly, but at least it's behind you now. Oscar nodded and invited her inside. They sat on the couch, and after a long silence, Sarah took a deep breath. There's something I need to tell you, she began quietly. I've been meaning to say this for a while, but you had so much on your plate. She hesitated before continuing, and honestly, I didn't want to ruin our time together. Oscar tensed, bracing himself for what was coming. I'm engaged, Sarah confessed softly. We've been together for 3 years. Oscar blinked, stunned. What? Why did you hide this from me? Sarah explained that her feelings for him were always based on friendship, not romance. That doesn't change the fact that I deeply care about you as my best friend, she reassured him. I love you, but not in the way you might have thought. I can't marry you, but if he's okay with it, I'd love to keep our friendship as it's always been. As Sarah's words sank in, Oscar felt an unexpected sense of relief. The pressure of choosing between Sarah and Linda vanished. Thank you for your honesty, he said, squeezing her hand. You're my best friend, and I'm glad we can stay that way. In the following weeks, Oscar focused on healing and moving forward. He spent more time with both Sarah and Linda, appreciating their unwavering support. Meanwhile, Poppy struggled to adjust to her new life. She had moved into a smaller apartment in a less prestigious part of town, and her finances were strained due to the terms of the divorce. She tried to rebuild her relationship with the children, but they responded coldly and distantly, their wounds still fresh. Poppy was diagnosed with deep depression, and she even lost her job after frequent absences. Her employer told her, "I'm sorry, but we need a reliable employee. You're fired." The weight of loneliness pressed even harder on her. The children continued to avoid her, and so did her friends. Work had been her lifeline, but now even that was gone. What a fool I am, she often whispered to herself. But it was too late to think about that now. She had made her choice. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. 4 years ago, my wife Margaret and I, David, were deeply immersed in the world of art. It was a shared passion that united us, and as I like to think, we approached it with sincerity, without any pretentiousness. We loved art in all its forms and styles. Anything that had artistic significance caught our interest. Our home was a gallery in itself, filled with the best pieces we could afford, and we often visited art galleries and museums, at least once a month, sometimes more frequently. We were regular members of 2 local galleries, attending every exhibition, opening, and art evening. Sometimes we even traveled to larger cities to see special exhibits. Over the 20 years of our marriage, we had built a close circle of friends who shared our passion for art, though of course, we had friends with other interests as well. But it was with this group of art lovers that we felt the strongest bond. However, there was one person in our circle that neither Margaret nor I particularly enjoyed spending time with: Lisa, the second wife of our friend Tom. For Tom's sake, I tried to get along with her, but it wasn't easy. Lisa seemed indifferent to the kind of art we all cherished. She often made dismissive comments about the classics, which left us puzzled. We couldn't understand how Tom tolerated her obvious lack of taste. But there was one question none of us dared to ask. Why did Tom marry her? Lisa, undoubtedly attractive, had a certain charm that was hard to ignore, like a gentle breeze on a cold day. She carried herself with understated elegance, although by the time the events of this story took place, it was clear that Tom's patience with her superficiality had worn thin, despite her outward appeal. His public remarks toward her were becoming more frequent and awkward, and I often had to step in to smooth things over. As a professional mediator, I prided myself on being able to resolve conflicts, even in personal situations. In the case of Tom and Lisa, I became something of a peacemaker, and although my efforts always helped to diffuse the tension, neither of them ever expressed gratitude for it. Fortunately, our art-loving friends appreciated my attempts to keep the peace. Despite my annoyance with Lisa, I tried to remain polite, and she reciprocated in the rare moments we interacted directly. By the time this incident occurred, I had known Lisa for about 4 years. The largest gallery in our town was preparing to celebrate its 50th anniversary with a major exhibition of paintings and rare lithographs, including one of its most famous works. This event promised to be the highlight of the year, with fantastic food and drinks, as always, and I was eagerly anticipating it. However, a week before the event, Margaret received an unexpected call from Lisa, who sounded unusually excited. It turned out that Tom had been called away on a business trip. The event was scheduled for Wednesday evening, and for reasons unknown to us, Lisa was very eager to attend. During the conversation, Lisa unexpectedly confessed, I know most of your group probably finds me a bit boring, but I'm really trying to fit in. You and David have always been the most understanding. Can I come with you? Margaret, a little taken aback, reluctantly agreed, and Lisa seemed thrilled with the invitation. Later, Margaret recounted the conversation to me with a hint of reluctance in her voice. Lisa called. Tom won't be in town for the anniversary celebration, and she asked if she could come with us. I groaned. Well, I couldn't say no, could I? I muttered. Great. I'll need a stiff drink or maybe some pills to get through that evening. Maybe both. Margaret laughed. Oh, don't be so dramatic. She seemed to be genuinely trying. She wants to fit in with our group and learn more about art. Maybe we should take her under our wing and give her an art course, I said with a smirk. Margaret playfully nudged me. Behave yourself. I gradually resigned myself to the idea that Margaret and I would be responsible for entertaining Lisa throughout the evening. But a few days before the event, Margaret surprised me again. David, dear, she began in that sweet tone that always preceded bad news. What now? I asked, bracing for the worst. You know how much I've been looking forward to the anniversary celebration, she began. But something urgent has come up at work. If I want to advance in my career, I'll have to leave on Wednesday morning and won't return until late Friday night. I'm so sorry, she whispered, tracing gentle patterns on my chest with her fingers. The first thought that crossed my mind, one I couldn't suppress, was a question I had asked before. Is John Miller going on this trip? Without hesitation, I asked again, Is John going? I couldn't hide my irritation. Yes, along with 2 other colleagues, she replied, her voice carrying a slight defensive note. She tried to lighten the mood by switching to a playful tone. Why do you always get worked up over him? But her attempt to joke fell flat. Because, I responded firmly, he's always hovering around you. And honestly, I don't trust him. I wanted to believe I was exaggerating, but deep down I wasn't so sure. Oh, David, Margaret sighed, clearly tired. You're misunderstanding everything. Really? I shot back, not believing her. Then why does he always try to dance with you during every company event? And what about that night we ran into him and his supposed girlfriend at the club? How could he have known we'd be there? My memories resurfaced, and my irritation grew. We've already discussed this, she replied, her voice now tinged with irritation as well. It was a coincidence. Besides, he dances with other women too. Just not slow dances, she added, as if that somehow made things better. And what about his comment the other time? Do you remember when I said you only dance slow dances with me? I reminded her, the moment still fresh in my mind. He was joking. She brushed it off as if it didn't matter. I didn't find it funny at all, I retorted sharply, feeling my frustration build. Oh, sweetheart, she said softly, trying to soothe me. Don't be jealous. You know you're much more attractive than him. She wasn't wrong. I knew I looked better than John, and I was confident I could handle him if it ever came to that. But appearance didn't always matter to women, especially not to Margaret. Her previous serious boyfriend, before we got married, looked a lot like John, and she had been madly in love with him until he messed everything up. Still feeling uneasy, I asked, Do you really need to go on this trip? Yes, darling, I do, she replied in a gentle voice, her hand trailing across my chest again. If you don't believe me, you can ask Brad. Brad, her boss, was always straightforward, and I knew he wouldn't sugarcoat the truth. I muttered something, still not fully satisfied with the answer, but Margaret wrapped her arms around me, and that usually calmed me down. However, this time a new question surfaced. Gently pulling away to look into her eyes, I asked, Are you going to tell Lisa she's not coming with us since you won't be there? Margaret looked puzzled. Why would I do that? You're still going, right? She can go with you. I groaned in frustration. I was counting on you to help me handle her endless questions and strange behavior. Now I have to deal with it on my own. Our friends will be there, she said patiently. Just be kind, David. She's really trying to fit in. It might even be fun. Yeah, sure, I muttered, unconvinced. You'll probably just sit there all night with a drink, she teased, chuckling softly. Then she started massaging my shoulders and added, "Come on, let me help you relax." I realized she was trying to smooth things over, so I decided to play along. Soon enough, we both relaxed, and I lifted her into my arms and carried her to the shower, where we splashed and laughed, temporarily forgetting the tension that lingered between us. Afterward, we went to bed. Still, I couldn't sleep for a long time that night. The thought of her going on that trip with John bothered me deeply, and the idea of dealing with Lisa without Margaret's help wasn't appealing either. Even though our friends would be there, I doubted they'd be of much assistance. My mind kept spinning until I finally drifted into a restless sleep. 2 days later, the unease became too much to ignore, so I called Brad. We had a decent relationship. We'd worked together a few times and even played tennis as doubles partners. So I tried to keep the conversation light. I started by asking about tickets for an upcoming tennis match before bringing up what was really on my mind. Brad confirmed that Margaret was indeed supposed to go on the trip. But one thing he said shocked me. Only she and John were going. No other colleagues. Brad mentioned that the final decision had been made recently, so Margaret might not have known about the change at first. But even so, the news left me feeling uneasy. That night, before her departure, I made sure Margaret was completely exhausted, hoping it would help both of us, especially me, sleep better. The next morning, she voiced a few minor complaints, though they came across as more playful than serious. Her tone reassured me, and I let go of my worries about her spending 2 nights alone with John. But soon, another dilemma arose. I had to take Lisa to the gala myself. I called her around noon on Wednesday, partly hoping to find an excuse to avoid it, despite having already promised to go. However, when she answered, her enthusiasm made it clear that canceling would make me feel like a real jerk. "I can't wait to see the exhibit with someone who doesn't constantly criticize me, like Tom does," she exclaimed excitedly at one point. I mentally prepared for a potentially awkward evening, but I promised myself that I would do my best to make it enjoyable. For the event, I dressed in a formal suit, and when I arrived to pick her up, I was wearing a tuxedo. When Lisa stepped out, she wore a stunning, strapless, sleeveless, floor-length electric blue gown. The dress revealed her shoulders, and a daring slit on the left side reached nearly to her thigh. She completed the look with a sapphire necklace and matching bracelet, adding elegance to her appearance. "You look amazing," I genuinely admired, helping her drape a pashmina over her shoulders before we left. "Thanks, and you're the most elegant penguin I've ever seen," she teased with a smile. Our conversation on the way to the exhibit was a bit awkward, but once we arrived, grabbed oysters, shrimp, vegetables, and drank 2 glasses of wine each, the tension began to ease. With the wine, the conversation flowed much more naturally. As we wandered through the exhibit, Lisa kept asking questions and sharing her impressions. It was clear that the early works didn't particularly impress her. You can see his attention to detail here, which evolved over time into the distinctive biomorphic shapes he became known for. Lisa studied a painting closely, finishing her second glass of white wine, and then smirked. "Honestly, this looks like a bad still life." She laughed. "I'll need another glass if the rest are like this," she joked, holding out her empty glass. Smiling at her remark, I went to get another drink, especially since I wasn't much of a fan of oysters myself. "Thank you, David," she said, taking the glass, her fingers briefly brushing mine. "There's a lot to take in here. I don't always understand why everything is painted like this," she admitted. "Even the most seasoned art lovers struggle sometimes," I reassured her with a smile. "In this piece, he uses a monochromatic background to emphasize the simple forms and lines. It creates the feeling of a complex constellation in the night sky. Some say this chaotic image reflects emotional turmoil." "Wow," Lisa giggled. After a short pause, reflecting on what I had said, she added, "I think I get it now. Thank you, David. You're a genius." I laughed. "I'll take the genius title, but let's not go overboard with the compliments," I joked. In response, she hugged me warmly and sincerely. To my surprise, I actually began to enjoy leading her through the exhibit. Her comments weren't silly or inappropriate. On the contrary, they were either funny or insightful, and sometimes even surprisingly accurate, especially considering it was already her fourth glass of wine. She saved her wittiest comment for last when we approached a piece called Mother. After a few minutes of contemplation, she finished her wine and asked, "Is this supposed to be a woman?" "Yes, it is," I replied with a smile. "It's a highly abstracted image, reduced to its essence." "Well," she smirked, "she's got a nice chest, though she could definitely use a sandwich." Chuckling, she added, "Honestly, I have art at home that's much more appealing." "Beauty is in the eye of the beholder," I responded with a smile. "True," she said with a sly smile, "but I guarantee the artwork in my house will impress you far more than anything you've seen here tonight." We were mingling with our friends, and the conversations turned out to be surprisingly engaging. Liza often chimed in, cleverly picking up on my remarks, occasionally giving me a playful glance as she repeated something I had said. By 11, people began to leave. Liza excused herself to freshen up, and I seized the moment to retreat to a quiet corner and discreetly call Margaret. Using a phone in the gallery wasn't entirely allowed, so I had to be cautious. I dialed her number, but the call went straight to voicemail. I left a brief message, mentioning that the evening was going better than expected, and asked her to call me back when she could. On the way home, it became clear that Liza had drunk a little more than she should have, though she still maintained her elegance. During the ride, Liza said something that completely caught me off guard. "David, I don't think I've ever told you this, but I want to thank you. Whenever Tom made his awkward comments, you always found a way to get me out of those uncomfortable situations. I really appreciate it." She gently squeezed my hand, her voice filled with genuine gratitude. "I hope I've been able to help," I replied, a bit surprised by her candidness. She continued, her tone still soft but now more profound. "And thank you for being so kind to me today. I'm sure you dreaded this evening, but I hope it wasn't as bad as you expected." I hesitated, searching for the right words. "Actually, I had a good time tonight. I hope you did too." At that moment, the headlights of a passing car illuminated her blue eyes and the sapphire necklace around her neck, making them sparkle. "I had a wonderful time," she said, flashing me a dazzling smile. When we arrived at her house, she took my hand and casually asked, "Would you like to see my paintings? I think many would agree they deserve more admiration than the ones at the exhibition." It was a little past 11, and knowing I hadn't planned on sleeping until midnight, I said, "Sure, I'd be interested." I quickly got out of the car, walked around to her side, and opened the door, offering my hand to help her out. The slit in her dress shifted, revealing more of her left thigh than I had noticed before, and it immediately caught my attention. Liza fumbled with her keys, and I helped her unlock the door. Once inside, she closed the curtains and smiled. "Give me a minute before I show you the art I'm so proud of." "Would you like a drink?" she asked with a playful tone. "I think I've had enough for tonight," I replied. "I should probably head home." "Don't worry. By the time you leave, you'll be completely sober," she winked. "But if you change your mind, the bar is over there," she added, pointing to a small nook between the living room and the kitchen. Then she disappeared into another part of the house, leaving me alone. I took the opportunity to look at the paintings on the walls. After a few minutes, I thought about calling Margaret again, but her phone still didn't answer. I left another brief message, asking her to call me back, though a slight sense of unease began to creep in. Trying to shake it off, I continued to look at the artwork. I had only been in Tom and Liza's house once before, back when he was still married to his first wife. The art had changed since then. Some of the pieces were quite good, though none of them captivated me as much as Liza had claimed. I wondered if she had gone to retrieve something special from the bedroom as I scanned the room. Suddenly, I heard a soft sound behind me. I turned around to see Liza returning to the living room, still in her heels and sapphire necklace. But now, the only other thing she wore was a matching ankle bracelet, and nothing else. If I had been holding a drink, I would have dropped it. "So, David, tell me." Her voice was seductive as she slowly twirled. "Do you find this artwork more impressive than anything you've seen on canvas or in marble?" I stood there, completely stunned, utterly mesmerized by what I saw. In my mind, there wasn't a shred of doubt. Lisa had the most captivating figure I had ever seen, whether in person or on screen. She stood confidently, one leg in front, knees slightly bent, her hands firmly resting on her hips. A playful smile danced on her lips. "So, what do you think of my creation?" she asked. "Better than anything you'd find in a gallery, right?" I managed to mumble something like, "Definitely," but I wasn't sure exactly what I said, as my thoughts were swirling wildly in my head. One thing was certain: this was more thrilling than anything I had ever experienced. As Lisa moved closer, her smile became even more self-assured, as if she was fully aware of the effect she was having on me. "So, you really like what you see, don't you? A true art connoisseur," she teased, laughing softly. I wish I could explain exactly what happened next or what was going through my head at that moment. Was it pure desire? I can't say if Margaret came to mind or why I hadn't answered her calls. I didn't think about Tom either. I simply didn't think. All I know is that I stood up and began undressing, never taking my eyes off Lisa, who at that moment was the most mesmerizing sight I had ever seen. I helped her settle on the couch, then gently leaned over her. It quickly became clear that Lisa took her Kegel exercises seriously. After we caught our breath, we moved to the bedroom, though the night was restless. By 9 o'clock the next morning, we were having breakfast: blueberry pancakes and sausage pie, prepared by Lisa. As I ate, my mind slowly cleared from the fog of the previous night, and I started to wonder why Margaret hadn't called me back. It dawned on me how lucky Tom was to have such a woman by his side, though he didn't seem to realize her worth. And I had just experienced the most vivid night of my life with a woman I had once underestimated. If I didn't have a meeting at noon and the need to change out of my tuxedo, I might have stayed longer. "Liza, how about dinner tonight?" I asked as I got up from the table. "We need to talk about something." My appetite was satisfied, as was everything else. "I can make dinner here," she offered with a warm smile. "Let me take you out somewhere," I replied. "Are you free tonight?" She laughed. "You've caught me. I have a flexible schedule, so I'm taking the day off." "Great. How about 7 o'clock? I'll pick you up," I suggested. She laughed again. "I hope you're planning to stay the night." "That's what we need to discuss," I said with a smile. Around 11:55 a.m., just before my meeting started, Margaret finally called. I told her I couldn't talk at that moment and didn't ask why she hadn't called me back the night before, which seemed to put her at ease. I asked her to call me later. Despite the lack of sleep, I had an excellent meeting. Maybe it was the residual adrenaline and endorphins from the night before. By 5 in the evening, I had successfully brought both sides to an agreement. I even managed to take a hot shower and a quick nap before heading to pick up Lisa. When I arrived, she was wearing a yellow summer dress that seemed custom-made for her. She was in high spirits, wrapping her arm around my shoulder as we walked to the car. When we got to the restaurant, she chuckled quietly. Over dinner, we avoided discussing art. Instead, I was captivated by her knowledge of music, tennis, and hockey. She shared that she had been a violin prodigy as a child, but her career was cut short after a serious injury during a girls' hockey game in her teenage years. After her recovery, she learned to play the piano, but decided not to pursue music as a career. Instead, she got involved in event planning in college, where she thrived. When we returned to her place, she held my hand tightly as I walked her to the door. "We still have a lot to talk about," she said, smiling. Then, laughing, she added, "Come into the living room." Once inside, she sat next to me on the couch and took my hands in hers. "David, I need to confess something. I lured you in. I had wanted this for a long time, but the right moment only came last night. I'll be honest. I want Tom out of our lives, and I want you, especially after what happened between us. No one has ever made me feel what I felt with you." Once again, she left me speechless. My emotions had shifted 180 degrees in just one day, and I wasn't sure if my feelings for her were real or just fleeting passion, but I wanted to find out. "Can you take tomorrow off?" I asked. She smiled playfully. "If you want me to, I will." We agreed to spend the whole day together to see if we were truly compatible. That night, we made love again, spending hours discovering new depths in each other, experiencing sensations we never knew existed. By Friday afternoon, we were rehearsing for a concert, and it became clear just how much more musically talented Lisa was than me. She was a true natural star. Meanwhile, my phone remained silent. No calls from Margaret. When Lisa and I finally parted that evening, I told her, "I have a lot to think about." "And you?" I asked, assuming she would have her own doubts. But she just laughed quietly. "Honestly, I have nothing to think about. I'm just waiting for you to decide." I went home Friday night and Margaret was already there. Her face was hard to read, a mix of deep contemplation, uncertainty, and maybe a hint of fear. "Where have you been? What's going on?" she asked. "I was with Lisa," I said. "I think she's going to leave Tom." "Did you talk to her about it?" "Yes, but I haven't heard much about your trip. How did it go?" "Oh, it went fine. Very intense, but we sealed the deal we wanted. Brad will be pleased," she replied with a small, tired smile. "But we probably need to talk about a few things." "You're right," I agreed. "But maybe we can do that tomorrow." That night, we kept things simple. We had dinner and watched a movie, and later, when we went to bed, we made love with a passion I hadn't felt in a long time. The difference between what I felt with Margaret and what I felt with Lisa was striking. The next morning, I went for a long bike ride while Margaret went to her fitness class. Later, after lunch, we finally sat down to talk. "Something happened while I was away," she began. "Yeah, I figured," I said, trying to ease the tension with a laugh. The next 6 months were tough, but it only brought Lisa and me closer. Both Margaret and Tom seemed stuck in a cycle of trying to rebuild their marriages while also contemplating their end. Eventually, Lisa and I freed ourselves from all that uncertainty by renting a house together. 3 months later, we moved in. Once the divorces were finalized and Margaret and Tom bought out our shares of the homes, Lisa and I bought a place of our own. Soon after, we got married. But Margaret's life didn't improve. A year later, John left her, breaking her heart. Now, 4 years later, I still feel like I'm living in a dream. Every night, I fall asleep next to an incredible, vibrant woman who feels like a masterpiece to me. I couldn't be happier. Perhaps if Margaret hadn't confessed to her affair with John, I wouldn't have dared to admit that I had also cheated on her with Lisa. But Margaret already knew it had happened. As Lisa later told me, Margaret had planned our meeting alone together and was going to leave me anyway. But that doesn't matter now. I'm happy to have a woman like Lisa by my side. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.